Hi everybody, and I'm hoping that, well, I think it's a small number.
Do you want it?
Everyone hear me? Yeah? No problem? Good.
Yeah, okay.
That's fine. The last time I presented at a conference, I tried to get no text on my presentation or only pictures, but since I knew you guys were risk managers and all that, I relented and I put a little bit of text on this presentation in some places. So I know that the title of the presentation is looking ahead, but we need to look back a little bit first and see what's happened. December 25th, 2009, how many years ago? 5 years ago, right there. That was the first time Amazon sold more ebooks than paper books. Why? Christmas gifts in 2009, everybody got Kindles. And what did everyone do as soon as they unpacked the Kindle is they bought ebooks. So it's quite obvious then, in the light of that, that Christmas Day 2009 was the first time we sold more ebooks than paper books. April 24th, 2011, the last company in the world that manufactured typewriters stopped manufacturing typewriters. That's not very long ago, but it happened just in the last couple of years. A little bit of nostalgia around that. I think this one's even rusty. I don't know if that's a new one that they just rolled off the line, but in India, they were still manufacturing manual typewriters. March 13th, 2012, Britannica announced it will no longer be printing the encyclopedia. 1 year ago, they stopped doing their core business. But they didn't fail. A lot of case studies that you will have seen would say that Encyclopedia Britannica failed, the company failed, they didn't do well, they didn't read the trends. The fact is that they did. And they were working on a lot of experiments ahead of time to try and understand what it is that they should do to take their core competencies and translate it into a business in the technology age. And they messed up a few of those, and they got some of them right, and they now have a balance to the point where they've been profitable for the last 8 years. I think that's quite a success story. In 2012, more money was spent on advertising in online media than in print media. So that's a very important turning point, especially if your business is newspapers, or if your business is print magazines. The fact is, it's a trend that you can see that it's happening, and it's happening fast, according to that diagram over there. So what are you doing about it? This is, the top chart there shows minutes a day that the average person spends on the web or on a mobile app. And you can see the crossover point there was June 2011 in the United States, where people on average are spending more time using a mobile app than they are browsing the web on a traditional web browser. What does that mean? It means if your business doesn't have a mobile app, your people are probably not seeing your web content. Or soon they won't be. Now, that's not just the first world. The bottom chart here is India. Happened 2012. Where people are spending more time or have more mobile devices that they're using to surf the net than they are using full web browsers. A couple of industries, or 4 industries specifically that we picked on that were most impacted by technology change. Bookstores, that's 2011, July 2011. Borders Books liquidated, 400 stores closed, over 10,000 employees out of work. As a result of primarily failing to see the trend towards ebooks. Top there, newspapers. Now we all knew newspapers are coming to an end, aren't they? Right? But let's have a look at this. They haven't yet. There's a lot of independent newspapers or smaller newspapers that have gone bankrupt, but the big guys are still there. Rupert Murdoch bought the Wall Street Journal for $5.6 billion in 2007 and wrote down $2.8 billion in 2009. Lost half its value. Interesting. New York Times, $7 billion was in valuation a few years ago. It's now valued at less than $1 billion. And the Huffington Post is really doing well. The New York Times then bought them to try and do something about that. Was it in time? Time will tell. So, whatever industry you're in, there are some technologies that are going to come and eat you because you failed to spot them in time, or you failed to innovate to adapt to those changes to your industry. So there's a quote from The Matrix. You know, you can take the blue pill, wake up tomorrow morning and say, I was smoking something and that's all a lot of nonsense. And there's no technologies coming to eat your business. Or you can take the red pill and we'll have a look at some of these technologies that are coming at you, whether you like it or not. So this presentation isn't really going to be sort of what you can do about it. We'll unpack a few of those that are more obviously related to some of the industries that are predominant in South Africa. But we're really just going to have a look at some of these technologies that are up and coming and what it means for you. So I'm not offering you a process. I'm offering you some information about what I think is a list of technologies and how they might impact on certain types of businesses and industries. So scanning the horizon is something that you need to be doing. That's the only process. That's the only slide with process text on it, right? It says scan the horizon. Be on the lookout. You need people in your organization whose job it is, maybe not a full-time job, but whose job it is to be aware of new technologies that are coming out. To be aware of even technologies that are completely obtuse to the industry that you're in, that might be coming at you. One more process thing before we start is never forget the risk of technology itself. So one of my previous careers was at the airports company, and when technology doesn't work, what happens at the airport? Does anyone working there today remember how to do a manual check-in? I think if the system's been down and you've been at the airport, you'll know no one knows how to do a manual check-in anymore. They have to discover it while everyone's standing in line. They have to figure out the process while the line gets longer and longer. That's what happens. So don't ever forget that if technology goes away, you need something, either another copy of it somewhere to replace it with, or a process that will work without the technology. Maybe, yeah? Or protect it. Protect that basket very well. Okay, so we should also think DRP and business continuity. I think that's probably been covered sometime during this conference. But now, what are these technologies? Well, there's an obvious one. Boring, it's been clouded to death by the whole world these days, but it's still there, and it's still something that hasn't yet fully realized its potential. There are bank in the cloud companies. So if someone wants to set up a bank in South America, they can buy a license per user per month, and they can set up a bank. Okay, they need to get a banking license, but they don't need the technology to do it. So they're going to come and compete with someone who has spent millions and millions of dollars. Telepresence, telecommuting. A lot of my employees don't, some of them don't even live in South Africa, but certainly this trend, especially in sort of more technology and thought and strategic areas, why do people need to come to the office? There was a lady from an organization in the United States who'd never met her boss, who came up to South Africa to do some consulting work for us, and she had never met her boss, never been to the office, where she'd been employed for 8 years. This is not really happening in South Africa to the extent yet, but it's coming. Ultra-targeted advertising and search engine optimization. Most companies have got websites. Almost all companies have got websites. Very few of them know how those websites get onto Google's search results list. And of those few that do, have they optimized that process? People aren't going to see your web content unless grid computing, and it's a little bit technical. It really, really depends on a very specific industry, but can you basically leverage all the computers that you can see on the net to solve a problem for you? Free of charge is what NASA did a while back. They had a process where you could download a screensaver from them, and whenever your computer wasn't busy, the screensaver would kick in, obviously, because that's what computers do when they're not busy. And instead of just making pretty pictures on the screen, it was doing calculations for NASA. So that's kind of an example of how grid computing could be utilized. Mechatronics. It's kind of a change. Really, this is not a technology. So I'm sorry that it's on the slide, but I think it's something to note. It's a change in thinking about how we do engineering. To say, it's not just mechanical engineering in isolation and then electronic engineering in isolation. It's putting all these pieces together to create proper things. A simple example is ABS brakes. It's a mechanical device, right? You push on this thing, this hydraulic thing goes down, and it pushes these plates against a disc that's spinning, and it stops your car. But then you add an electronic and a control mechanism around it, and all of these sorts of things, and you get ABS brakes. An improved device because it used the concept of mechatronics. Then Google Glass. Anyone seen anything about Google Glass? if you're manufacturing screens today, like Samsung or LG or Sony or any manufacturing these crazy, incredible 3D screens, should you be worried about these sorts of technologies? Because they certainly can change your business. What if you don't need screens at all? What if you just wear a contact lens and whenever you need a screen, it appears in front of you? Fusion power, that's coming. I believe there's something under construction in France right now to try and leverage this. Certainly cheap, clean energy. That's the promise. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But there we're looking 2017 to 2020. Sometime in those time frames, we should be watching out for these things. If your business is very heavily dependent on power and you have some sort of strategic advantage, you're able to get it cheaply and efficiently. This could change your industry, change the structure of your